Hi, class. Well, today and this week, you will be focusing on what I think is one of the most important aspects of public speaking, and that is the importance of structure and organization when it comes to public speaking. And really, when you look at public speaking, there are three important components. Content, that is what you say, what you are presenting to the audience, the information, the stuff of the speech. Delivery, that would be how well you present and deliver the information to the audience. And the third would be structure, how well you organize and structure the information so the audience can follow the information in some kind of logical format. And when you look at the philosophers, and really much of what we get from public speaking is over 2,000 years old. There was about a 400-year period in the former Greek Empire, and you had four great philosophers, and kind of in order, and they really have given us most of what we still teach about public speaking today. That would be Protagoras, who's known as the father of debate. He was the first one that said, I think if I get students to discuss and have a debate about a particular issue, that's a good way to learn. Socrates came after Protagoras, and he took it to the next step. Why should the students have all the fun with the argumentation and debate? And you've probably heard of the Socratic method of teaching, or the Socratic dialectic. That really came from Socrates and involved a system of learning where Socrates, if you were in his class, he would just call on you and then pose a question. Based on your answer, he would then have a debate with you. And so Socrates, the Socratic dialectic, is where he's challenging students to actually have a discussion with him about the information presenting. Then you had Plato. Plato really was kind of the skeptic in terms of, whoa, just because people speak well doesn't mean that they are speaking the what? And what was Plato always after? Plato was always after the truth. So he was kind of the skeptic, kind of the warning shot as far as, okay, public speaking is really important because you can have a lot of influence on other people if you do it well. But at the same time, from the perspective of the audience, we've got to make sure that we're using it to seek and discover the truth. And then after Plato, you had Aristotle. And what Aristotle did is he wrote everything down in what are known as the three canons of rhetoric. Much of what we teach about public speaking comes from those three canons written by Aristotle, and all contributed to were Protagoras, Socrates, Plato, and then Aristotle. So those are the big four, and they basically uniformly agree that when it comes to public speaking, you've got to be able to have good content, an excellent delivery, but more importantly, and I really believe that structure is more important than the content and the delivery, because if the audience can simply follow the development of your ideas in a logical format, they're going to take in a lot more of that information. You're going to reach a higher degree of shared meaning with your audience if you are clear, you are organized, and you are structured. Then you throw in an outstanding delivery and really good content. Now you have the full package as a speaker. And I remember when I went back to college, and God, I barely graduated. I had to go to summer school just to get my high school diploma. And when I kind of figured things out and went back to school, I was about 25 years old, and I had done quite a bit of public speaking up to that time. And I remember when I took my first public speaking class, the thing that I was most amazed by is that there were set structural paradigms. There were organizational formats to follow depending on what kind of speech I was going to give, and just learning that structure and that organization just really helped me get to that next level of public speaking, because I learned how to present ideas in a way so they unfold to the audience. That organization and structure makes it easy for the audience to take in and hopefully understand your words. So this week, all about the structure. And at the end of the week, you're going to take a quiz. And what I'm asking you to do on that quiz is to be able to actually create an outline on the couple of topics that I give you on the quiz. A couple of you have already taken a shot at that. After today, you probably want to retake that quiz because you should be able to get the full 10 points on that particular quiz. All right, so to first talk about how to structure a speech, how to construct an outline for a speech, let's go ahead and let's go to this week's module. All right, so we are on the first page in this week's module on structure. And so the first thing that I want to go over is just the basic components of any speech outline. And really, this is the same for a paper. Any paper, any speech should always have 3 sections: introduction, body, and a conclusion. And basically what you're doing in a speech, in your intro, you're telling the audience what you're going to talk about. In the body of the speech, you talk about it. And then when you get to the conclusion, you summarize what you just talked about, right? So, real important, when it comes time to write a speech or write a paper, once you know your topic and your thesis, right, the main focus of your speech on that particular topic, you always want to construct the body of the speech first, because that's the stuff of the speech. And in a second, when we go over the components for both the introduction and the conclusion, you'll find that both of those sections are very similar. All that really changes would be the overall tense. In the introduction, here's what I'm going to talk about. In the conclusion, here's what I just talked about. So it makes it even faster and easier. Write the body first, then based on what's in the body, construct your introduction and your conclusion together. That'll save you so much time when it comes to writing speeches and writing papers, because we've all been there where we're just staring at a blank screen for 30 minutes, hoping words will magically appear when we sit down to write a paper. And one of the reasons why, it's probably because you're starting with the introduction. Well, yes, the introduction is hard to write, especially if you don't know the information that you're setting up in the body of the speech. So it's easier to set up and preview information. It's easier to summarize information if you know what that specific information is first. So we always begin by constructing the body of the speech first. With that said, though, I want to go through just the main components of the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. And these are pretty true regardless of what kind of speech you're going to do. You're going to have an intro, body, and conclusion, and you should have these main components in each of those sections. So if you look at the introduction, we're always going to begin a speech with what we call an attention getter. That's a device to capture the attention of the audience and pull them into your speech even before you tell them the topic of the speech. And from here on out, any speech that you submit in this class, first words I want to hear out of your mouths are the attention getter. I don't want an intro. Hi, my name's Joe, and I'm going to talk. No, that defeats the whole point of the attention getter. Also, too, a common mistake that a lot of speakers make, even before they get to the attention getter, they'll begin the speech with what I call a disclaimer. You've heard these before. Oh, I'm really sick. Please bear with me as I try to get through my speech. I'm just really nervous. I don't know if I can get through my presentation, right? Never begin a speech with any kind of disclaimer, because all you're really doing is telling the audience, my speech will suck. It's an attempt to lower the expectations of the audience. So even if you're nervous, even if you're sick, you don't need to tell the audience, let them figure that out on their own. Always begin your speech with a set attention getter. And even if you want to introduce yourself to the audience, do it after the attention getter. So attention getter, then my name's Joe Smith, and today I'm here to talk about, and then you go right into your topic sentence. When it comes to the attention getter too, there are basically 5 kinds of attention getters, or 5 ways to begin a speech or a paper for that matter. Best kind of attention getter is an actual real world story. So anytime you can begin your speech with a brief story, no more than 4 or 5 sentences, it's also what we call an anecdote. That's a great way to begin a speech. Second kind of attention getter could be what we call a hypothetical example. That's where you make up a scenario and you include the audience in that scenario. So usually a hypothetical attention getter will begin with the words, imagine. Imagine you wake up, you are handcuffed to a, and then you go on into your story. A third kind of attention getter would be to use rhetorical questions. That would mean that you would begin your speech by posing a series of questions to the audience. Now, I think most of you know what a rhetorical question is. A rhetorical question is anytime you pose a question, but you aren't expecting the audience to actually respond. So it's not like you're asking a question, somebody raises his or her hand, you call on them, they answer the question. That's actually a terrible way to begin a speech, because public speaking, a lot of it is being able to control the attention of the audience. And so if you begin with an actual question, you're kind of giving up that control right at the outset. But rhetorical questions, great way to begin. And to help the audience understand that you're using rhetorical questions and not an actual question, always use a series of 3 questions. So kind of question 1, question 2. By the time you get to that third question, anybody who thought it was an actual question, hand went up. Oh, must be one of those rhetorical questions. And then you see the hand go back down. Also, great way to begin a speech, easy way to begin a speech is begin your speech with a quotation. Just make sure that it's a short, concise quotation. We don't want it to go on too long, so a phrase or 2. Great way to begin a speech. And the 5th kind of attention getter, also good to begin a speech with any kind of statistic. Usually the more startling the statistic, the better. And startling statistics work pretty well when you're beginning a persuasive speech. So always begin your speeches from here on out with an attention getter, and basically 5 kinds to choose from: an actual story, hypothetical or made up story, rhetorical questions, quotation, or a statistic. Once you have the attention of the audience, the very next thing you want to do in the speech is to tell the audience the topic of the speech. And you want that to be really clear, to the point. This brings me to the topic of my speech. Or today, we will focus our attention on, I know that sounds simple, but if you don't have a clear topic sentence early in the introduction, then it creates confusion for the audience. They're kind of listening to the intro and they're kind of guessing what the topic is. Also, too, it's a reason why you want to make sure that your attention getters are never longer than 30 seconds, because then the audience might get a little bit confused and not think there's an actual topic to the speech. So attention getter, 30 to 40 seconds. That should lead right into you telling the audience the topic of the speech. That is immediately followed by your thesis statement, which is a single clear statement giving your overall opinion or establishing your specific focus for the presentation. We'll get into that a little more specifically when we get to the specific speeches. And then the last thing you want to do in your introduction is to preview your main points in the order in which you will cover them in the body of the speech. Another reason why it's important to do the body first, you can't really write your preview until you have the body of the speech done. And if we take a quick look at the overall body of the speech, typically in a speech, you're going to have anywhere from 2 to 4 main points, depending on the length of the speech. But notice you should have a title for each main point that you're going to focus on in the body of the speech. You want to take these titles, and that is what you're going to tell the audience in the preview. Let's say you're talking about something in chronological order. So your first main point would be the past, second main point, the present, third main point, the future. If we go back to the overall preview at the end of the introduction. So in the next few minutes, I'm first going to focus on the history and background. Then we'll focus on some present uses. And finally, we'll look ahead to see what's in store in the future. And so I'm simply telling the audience the titles of the main points in the order in which I will cover them. And that's so important because that kind of gives the audience kind of a preview of coming attractions so they know specifically what you're going to focus on when you get to the body of the speech. Then, when you get to the body of the speech, you just want to make sure that you have your specific titles in for each main point. And then you would include all of the information to help the audience have a better understanding of whatever it is you're talking about in the speech. Right now, the one thing that I want to highlight in terms of each of the main points, you want to make sure that each main point ends with what we call a transition or a transition sentence. And all the transition does is it connects the main points. It tells the audience when you're leaving a main point and going into the next. For example, if we use that same past, present, future structural format, when I get to the end of all of my information on the past, on the history, I would have a transition sentence that went something like, so with this understanding of the history and background, let's next focus on the present applications. So all I'm doing in that transition, I'm telling the audience the title of the main point that I'm leaving and the title of the main point that I'm going into. And that's so simple and easy to do. But if you leave out your transition, then you lose the structure and the body of the speech, because if the audience doesn't hear that verbal transition, they're just going to think that the first line in main point 2 is still part of main point 1. So you've got to make sure you understand the importance of transitions. Always end a main point with the transition. The only exception to that is when you get to your last main point in a speech, you do not need a transition after the last main point, because if you look at the overall conclusion, that will begin with the summary of your main points. So that would be something like, in the last few minutes, we covered the history and background, present uses, and future endeavors. So we're just repeating our 3 main points. We restate our thesis. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of this topic. And a really good way to end a speech, and I don't know about you, but I've written lots of papers, and then I get to the end and I'm trying to find that last line that really ends the speech and gives it some impact and a sense of finality. And public speaking, even more important, I've got to make sure that that last line tells the audience the speech is over. So after I say that last line, they're not expecting another line. They can go ahead and applaud for a job well done. So great way to always come up with your ending to a speech is to refer back to the opening attention getter, right? So if you began your speech with a story, at the end, refer back to that same story. And the audience is pretty used to this kind of format. We see it a lot in movies, right? You're about 2 hours in, and then all of a sudden you see the film, it'll flash to kind of a similar scene that was at the very beginning of the movie, and you kind of, oh, we must be getting to the end of the movie. So great way to end a speech is always to refer back to your opening attention getter. It's what we call in public speaking the sandwich effect. Like when you're building a sandwich, you don't start with wheat and then end with pumpernickel, right? You're going to start with wheat, you're going to end with wheat. Just make sure the middle's not bologna, and you're good to go with the overall speech structure. All right, so now what I'd like to do is let's focus on taking what we've just learned about the structure and use that to put an actual speech together. Okay, so we're going to jump to the next page in the module, and this is where I'm using Dear Basketball. That was a film by Kobe Bryant. And we're going to use that to actually learn how to put an outline together. And the outline format that we're going to use here will be the same outline format that you'll use for your critic speech, which is right around the corner. You guys will get to that starting next week. And just a little overview of the critic speech assignment. That's your next speech assignment. Essentially, that's a 3 to 5 minute speech. And the focus of that speech, or the topic of that speech, should focus on anything that can be looked at as a form of entertainment, where you can describe it and you can give an evaluation. You can tell us what you liked and didn't like. Don't need any research. This would just be based on your own opinion. And so typically for the critic speech, I'll get a lot of speeches on movies, guys, especially now with you guys being at home for over a year now. You guys are really up on Netflix and all of the streaming services. So this is just a great opportunity maybe to talk about a show that you really liked. It could also be a negative review. It could be on a show that maybe you want to tell us, hey, don't watch this. But doing a TV show or a movie, those will work great as a topic for the critic speech. But you're not limited to that. You could, a lot of you are into video games. You could do your critic speech on a video game. You could do it on a book. You could do it on a play or a musical that you've seen. I consider eating an art form, and even though a lot of us haven't been out to eat, you still could do your critic speech on your favorite restaurant or maybe a restaurant that you don't like. So anything that works as a form of entertainment will work as a topic for this speech. And if you're kind of confused, you have an idea for a topic, you're not sure if it works or not, just break me off an email. I'll get back to you and I'll let you know whether that topic works. But for the most of you, you're going to have a pretty easy job of coming up with a good topic for this particular speech. All right, so let's say that I'm putting my critic speech together and I'm going to do it on the short film Dear Basketball, done by Kobe Bryant. Actually won an Oscar for it back in 2019. All right, so I also know from what we just learned in going over the outline, once I have my topic and my thesis statement is I really liked this film, it was good, so I have a favorable overall opinion. Once I have those two things down, now I can start putting my outline together, but I'm going to start by putting the body of the outline together. So let's just go down. Let's pretend we've already watched the film. And so typically in a 3 to 5 minute speech, if you're looking at the body of the speech, you probably want to have about a minute of content in the description and a minute of content in the evaluation. And for this speech, for the critic speech, you don't have to worry about creating your own main points. Your main points are already assigned. So all of you, regardless of what your topic is, in the body of the speech, you're going to have two main points. The first main point, you're going to give us a description of the movie, the TV show, the restaurant, the book. And then second, you're going to give us your evaluation. That would be what you liked and didn't like. And so understand the difference between these two main points. In the description, no evaluative comments, right? So you don't want to use any evaluative terms like good, bad, like, didn't like, delicious, too expensive, right? Those are all evaluative comments, and those will all go in the evaluation. And so kind of the trick with the description is just the facts, ma'am, right? You just give us information. Right? So here I go, Dear Basketball, this is a short film chronicling Kobe Bryant's basketball career. This film is animated and narrated by Bryant. Now, again, doing this for the actual speech, I want to have about a minute of content here. So I might have, 5, 6, 7, 8 subpoints. But for this, just to show you how to put the outline together, I'm making it nice and short. And remember that when you take the quiz right after this, you'll have a quiz, and on that quiz, you'll be asked to create an outline for one of 4 topics listed at a couple fast food places. So same thing, even though when you do your actual critic speech, you'll have a lot more information in the body of the speech just for now. And when you take that short quiz, 2 subpoints in the description, that works. And then you want to make sure that you have a final subpoint in the description. That would be your transition. That's real important. And remember, transition tells me title of the main point that I'm leaving, title of the main point I'm going into. So now my transition. Now that you have a better understanding of Dear Basketball, I will next present my evaluation of the film. So everybody listening to the speech knows, okay, dude's done with the description, now going into the overall evaluation. In the evaluation, I want my points to be evaluative, what I liked or didn't like. This short film was both educational and inspirational. It is a great example of the importance of hard work and perseverance. So I'm giving you my take, my opinion, what I liked about the particular topic of the speech. And you'll find when you're initially putting your critic speeches together, it's just easier to describe than evaluate. So a lot of times you'll have more stuff in the description than in the evaluation. So a good way to stretch the evaluation is to just add because to the end of an evaluative comment. So it might be that you are doing a speech on a movie, and in your first main point you go, the acting was really good. All right, well, that's a little short. So how do I expand that? If you just add because to the end, the acting in the film was really good because now it forces me to give more information. So that's a good way to always beef up the evaluation. Always try to have a reason, right? An explanation, something to expand whatever your claim is as far as what you liked and didn't like. And also too, notice as I'm plugging information into the outline, I'm going to follow this very important rule. 1 sentence per subpoint. So what I don't want in the description is just a paragraph of information. And the reason why is I'm creating an outline that I'm going to use both to learn and practice my speech, and I'm creating an outline that I could use to actually deliver the speech. For that to be efficient and effective, I've got to make it real easy. If I can't think of the next line, I want to be able to glance down and see that next line easily on the outline. If I have stuff in a big paragraph, it's harder to find my place. So make sure when you plug information into your outline, always follow the rule, 1 sentence per subpoint. And as far as like numbers or letters, that would be the formatting. I really don't care about that. I just want to make sure that I can see each of the sections and that you spread everything out so it's easy to identify. If you know you have a really good outline, if you could take your outline to your speech and give it to a classmate, and they could give the speech using your outline. And so always kind of think of that. That really makes a difference if you spread everything out. So the spacing in an outline is real important. So now I have the body of the outline done. Now you're going to see how easy it is to create the introduction and the conclusion together. So let's go to this section. And the only thing that I have to create now when I get to my attention getter, or excuse me, when I get to my introduction, is to come up with my attention getter. I know everything else. And so typically when I do my intro and then my conclusion, I'll put in the attention getter, the heading, but I'll leave this blank. Then I'll go to my topic sentence, all right? This brings me to the topic of Dear Basketball. My thesis statement, this is my overall opinion. As a basketball fan, I love this film because it inspired me. And then my preview. Today, I will provide a description of Kobe's film and an evaluation of Dear Basketball. I've told the audience, look, I'm going to the description and then to the evaluation. Now, just write your conclusion. Because your conclusion, you're going to start with your reviewer summary, and it's just going to be the same as the preview right here. I'm just changing the tenses. Instead of I will, this is what I have done. So today I've provided a description and an evaluation of Kobe Bryant's film, Dear Basketball. Next, I just restate my thesis. This movie was both educational and inspirational. And then sense of finality to try to tie it back to the attention getter. So now when we hear about Kobe Bryant, we can add Academy Award winning filmmaker to the Mamba's legacy, Mamba out. And so now if I go back to the attention getter, right, and sorry, you would have to write your attention getter before you write that last line. Here, I just had a very simple 3 statements. When you think of Kobe Bryant, you associate him as one of the best basketball players of all time. But who knew the Black Mamba was also a creative and artistic filmmaker? This brings me to the topic of my speech. Topic sentence, Dear Basketball. So now I have my attention getter done. It completes the intro. Then I would actually go in and write my last line. Once I've done that, now I want to do a second draft of the outline. And then this time I'm going to put it in chronological order, introduction, body, and conclusion. And so now we take a look at the finished outline, right? I've got my intro with my 4 components, my attention getter, topic sentence, thesis statement, preview of my 2 main points. In the body, I have my 2 main points. I have a transition at the end of my first main point that connects the second. And then we go down to my conclusion, review my main points, restate my thesis, end the speech with a sense of finality. Good way to do that is to refer back to the attention getter. Now, when you take your quiz, and the quiz will ask you to create an outline for a critic speech based on the 4 topics that you were given with the quiz, you want your outline to look just like the sample outline that we just went over, right? And I'm making this even easier for you. Now, let's pull up a document. This would be a sample outline if I were taking the particular quiz, right? And so I chose to do mine on McDonald's, but here I give you the overall outline format. And so you see the intro, body, and conclusion. Notice I've got my attention getter, topic sentence, thesis statement, preview the 2 main points, and my description. I have 2 descriptive comments followed by my transition right here. Go to my evaluation, 2 things to provide my overall opinion on McDonald's, and then I go to my overall summary. Now, if we drop down here, this is what the outline should actually look like. And again, I don't care about the A, B's, C's, and D's. If you have bullet points here, numbers, or whatever, that's fine. And those are all formatting comments. What I really care about is making sure that you have each of the required sections in. So here we've got in our introduction, and I chose McDonald's. I hate fast food too. I haven't eaten a fast food place in probably 20 years, but I remember McDonald's. What do you think of when you hear the phrase, "You deserve a break today"? This reminds me of McDonald's, which is the focus of my speech today. So attention getter, topic sentence. Thesis statement, my overall opinion. I've always been a big fan of McDonald's. In the next few minutes, I will provide a description of this fast food restaurant and my overall evaluation. Then I go to my description. And one thing I do in my outlines, stuff that I'm not actually going to say in the speech, I put in all caps and bold, because I'm not going to go, "In the next few minutes, I will provide a description of this fast food restaurant and my overall evaluation." Body, description, McDonald's, also known as, no, I'm going to go from my preview right here to the first thing I say in my first main point. And so I've got 2 descriptive comments followed by my transition. Now that you know a bit more about McDonald's, I would next like to present my overall evaluation. I've got a couple evaluative comments here, and then I go into my conclusion. In the last few minutes, I've provided both a description and my personal evaluation of McDonald's. Here, summarizing my 2 main points. In the B subpoint right here, I restate my thesis. Hopefully you have a better understanding of why I'm a big fan of McDonald's. And now I end my speech by trying to tie back to the opening attention getter. So the next time you feel like you deserve a break today, just head over to the nearest golden arches. You want to get a 10 on the quiz? Just follow this format right here. And I don't go over this on anything else, so this is really a reward to those of you that have been watching the Zoom recordings, because you're going to get all the specific information you need to excel in this class. All right, so that would be an example right here. I don't think I can make this any easier for you unless I took the quiz for you, as far as this is what I'm after in your answer to the quiz. You want to get a 10? Here's what it should look like. All right, class, so hopefully that really makes it a lot easier for you to be able to know how to put an outline together and the basic components of an outline. We've also talked about the specific outline format that you're going to use and follow for your next upcoming speech. We'll start on that next week, which will be the critic speech assignment. We've also gone over topics for the critic speech. Remember, anything that can be viewed as a form of also, I forgot to mention this in the description. If you do your speech on any kind of story, right? If you're doing your speech on a movie or a book, in the description, just give us a couple sentences, right? As far as what the overall movie is about. Don't give us the play-by-play. You might talk about a really cool series on Netflix, but you've watched all 3 seasons, so don't give away the ending, right? If you're doing your speech on a movie, don't tell us who dies at the end. Don't tell us what happens, because some of us, after listening to your review, may want to go ahead and check out the show, check out the movie, check out the book. So just give us a short, brief overview in your descriptions if your topic focuses on any kind of story. No spoilers in this speech, all right? Also, too, you guys are doing a pretty good job on the video audio monologues, especially after I put up Michaela's and Trinity's, and you go, oh, that's kind of what we're after here. Boy, you guys really were getting some good work done. A lot of you, I like really kind of hamming it up, really getting in, breaking out your acting skills, but that's what we want. We want to get you out of your comfort zone. And what I'm really after in the audio video monologues is for you to understand that your voice and how you use it, it's the same thing as playing an instrument, right? So we want to learn how to hit all the notes so we can keep our audience engaged in our presentations. All right, keep working hard, do a good job on the quiz, and you have any questions at all, break me off an email, hit me up, I'll get back to you. Have a good week, folks. Let's really get this structure down. I think it's the foundation of being an outstanding public speaker. All right, talk to you later.